February 19th, 1945. 8 square miles of volcanic rock, sulfur, and ash. A place the Japanese called Sulphur Island, Iwo Jima. For 36 days, it would become the bloodiest battlefield in United States Marine Corps history. This is a story of uncommon valor, strategic necessity, and sacrifice beyond measure. By early 1945, American forces had fought their way across the Pacific, from the Marianas Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. Massive B, 29 superfortress bombers launch raids against the Japanese homeland, 1,500 miles away. But directly in their path, halfway to Tokyo, sat Iwo Jima. This tiny speck of volcanic rock, barely 10 square miles, housed Japanese radar stations that gave early warning of incoming raids. Japanese fighters stationed their intercepted damaged bombers returning from missions. The island couldn't be bypassed. It had to be taken. The prize, 3 airfields. If captured, Iwo Jima will provide emergency landing strips for crippled B-29s, a base for fighter escorts protecting bombing missions, and protection for the right flank during the upcoming invasion of Okinawa. Every airman flying to Japan would be within range of safety. But first, 20,000 Japanese defenders would have to be defeated. The Japanese commander was Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, a 53-year-old cavalry officer who had studied in America and understood his enemy. Unlike many Japanese commanders, Kurabayashi abandoned traditional tactics. He knew there would be no naval support, no air cover, no reinforcements. His mission wasn't to win. It was to kill as many Americans as possible and delay the inevitable. Before the battle, he wrote his wife, "The Americans will surely invade this Iwo Jima. Do not look for my return." For 8 months, Kurabayashi transformed Iwo Jima into a fortress. His men dug 11 miles of tunnel, some reaching 5 stories deep into volcanic rock. Over 700 pillboxes, blockhouses, and fortified caves were constructed, each positioned to create interlocking fields of fire. Artillery pieces and machine guns were hidden inside Mount Suribachi and throughout the northern highlands. These weren't beach defenses. Kurabayashi placed them inland, invisible to naval bombardment, and he gave unprecedented orders: no suicidal banzai charges. Japanese forces would fight from concealment, withhold fire until Americans came within killing range, and defend every yard of volcanic ash. One Japanese staff officer described the island as having no water, no sparrow, no swallow. For the 20,000 defenders, Kurabayashi promised their fighting positions will become their graves. The island itself was a defender's dream. Shaped like a pork chop, its southern end was dominated by 556-foot Mount Suribachi, an extinct volcano offering clear observation of every approach. The landing beaches were narrow strips of black volcanic ash that would swallow men's feet to the ankle. To the north, the terrain transformed into a nightmare labyrinth. Cliffs, canyons, ravines, and caves. Steam and sulfur vented from cracks in the ground. One Marine later said it was like fighting in hell itself. February 19th, 1945, 6:45 a.m. The invasion fleet, over 450 ships, surrounded Iwo Jima. 3 Marine divisions, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, totaling more than 80,000 men, prepared to land. It was the largest force of Marines ever assembled for a single battle. Major General Harry Schmidt commanded V Amphibious Corps. His plan: land 2 divisions on the southeast beaches, cut across the narrow isthmus, isolate Mount Suribachi, then drive north. Marine commanders originally requested 10 days of naval bombardment. They received 3. It wouldn't be enough. 9 a.m. H-hour. The first wave, 68 amphibious tractors carrying the assault teams, crossed the line of departure for 1,000 yards offshore. As they approached the beaches, an eerie silence hung over the island. No resistance. No enemy fire. Marines poured ashore. Red beach, green beach, yellow beach, blue beach. 6,000 men landed in the first 30 minutes. But immediately, problems emerged. The volcanic ash was like quicksand, swallowing boots and equipment. Vehicles sank to their axles. The beach terraces were too steep for Amtrak to climb. And then, precisely as Kurabayashi planned, the trap was sprung. At 9:30 a.m., every Japanese gun on the island opened fire simultaneously. Artillery shells, mortar rounds, and machine gun fire swept the beaches with surgical precision. Every gun position had been pre-sighted on the landing zones. Marines were caught in the open. Landing craft wallowed in brutal surf, broaching and overturning. Vehicles jammed the beach. Supplies piled up with nowhere to go. One Marine described it as trying to run in loose coffee grounds. The black ash offered no cover, no concealment, just exposure to withering fire from Mount Suribachi in the south and the highlands in the north. Follow-on waves brought tanks, artillery, and reinforcements, but the beach became a killing ground. Destroyed landing craft, burning vehicles, and abandoned equipment created an amphibious traffic jam. And still, the Marines pushed inland. Despite the hell on the beaches, Marines moved forward. The 28th Regiment on Green Beach reached the western shore of the island, cutting off Mount Suribachi. The 27th Regiment pushed toward Airfield No. 1. On the right flank, the 23rd and 24th Regiments encountered fortified positions near the rock quarry. Every yard was bought with blood. Marine Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, hero of Guadalcanal and Medal of Honor recipient, was killed by a mortar shell as he advanced toward the airfield. By nightfall the first day, 30,000 Marines were ashore, holding a beachhead 4,000 yards wide and 1,000 yards deep. But 2,420 men were already dead or wounded, an 8% casualty rate in just 12 hours, and the battle had barely begun. Mount Suribachi dominated the southern battlefield. Its slopes were honeycombed with caves, tunnels, and firing positions. Colonel Kanehiko Itsuchi commanded 2,000 defenders inside the mountain, and Kuribayashi expected them to hold for at least 10 days. The 28th Marine Regiment, under Colonel Harry Liversedge, drew the assignment. For 4 days, they fought for every yard. Flamethrowers, grenades, demolitions, and close-quarters combat cleared pillbox after pillbox. Marines called it hot rocks. The volcanic terrain radiated heat. Sulfur fumes choked lungs. Enemy mortar fire was relentless. One survivor said, "It was terrible, the worst I can remember. The Japanese mortarmen seemed to be playing checkers, using us as squares." A Marine died for every yard gained. By February 23rd, D-Day +4, the 28th Regiment was positioned at Suribachi's base. That morning, a 40-man patrol from Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, moved out, led by 1st Lieutenant Harold Schreier. They climbed cautiously, eliminating Japanese defenders still hidden in spider holes. At 10:20 a.m., they reached the summit. Staff Sergeant Louis Lowry, a Marine Corps photographer, captured the moment as 6 men struggled to plant a small American flag in the volcanic soil. Across the island and on ships offshore, thousands witnessed the raising. Horns blared, sirens shrieked, men cheered and wept. After 4 days of hell, the American flag flew over Iwo Jima. 3 hours later, a larger flag was brought to the summit, an 8-foot flag that could be seen across the entire island. As the second flag went up, Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal captured one of the most iconic images in American history. 6 men, 5 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman, struggling together to raise the flag against a stiff Pacific wind. 3 of those 6 men would die on Iwo Jima before the battle ended. Rosenthal's photograph would win the Pulitzer Prize and become an eternal symbol of American courage and sacrifice. But while Suribachi's capture was inspirational, the strategic value was equally important. Observation posts on the summit could now direct counter-battery fire against Japanese artillery still active in the northern highlands. The worst fighting still lay ahead. With Suribachi secured, General Schmidt launched the main offensive northward. All 3 Marine divisions advanced abreast. The 5th Division on the left, the 3rd Division in the center, and the 4th Division on the right. Their objective: drive through the Motoyama Plateau, capture 2 more airfields, and eliminate the main Japanese defensive line. Kuribayashi's forces, dug deep into the volcanic rock, waited. The real battle for Iwo Jima was about to begin. The Marines encountered an enemy unlike any they'd faced before. No banzai charges, no desperate suicide attacks. Instead, Japanese forces fought from concealed positions, emerging to fire and then disappearing into tunnels. As one Marine said, the Japanese weren't on Iwo Jima. They were in Iwo Jima. Flamethrowers became essential. Demolition teams crawled forward to seal cave entrances. Each position had to be cleared individually. And Kuribayashi's artillery, 150 mm howitzers and 120 mm mortars, fired with deadly accuracy. One Marine officer noted, the Japanese could snipe with those big guns. Casualties mounted at a horrifying rate. Every feature on the northern plateau earned a name written in blood. The 4th Division fought at Turkey Knob and the amphitheater, a natural depression surrounded by fortified positions where every advance drew fire from multiple directions. The 5th Division encountered Nishi Ridge and the Gorge, volcanic canyons where Japanese defenders held the high ground. The 3rd Division faced Cushman's Pocket, a maze of caves and ravines so complex that entire companies disappeared into the network. For a week, Marines gained 4,000 yards at a cost of 7,000 casualties. That's nearly 2 men for every yard. The fighting broke units in men. 19 of 24 battalion commanders became casualties. One company that landed with 133 Marines left the island with only 9. Hospital corpsmen, Navy medics attached to Marine units, suffered catastrophic losses. 332 killed, 659 wounded. These unarmed medics ran through fire to treat wounded Marines, often dying beside the men they tried to save. The volcanic ash turned red with blood. The smell of death hung over the island, and still the Marines pushed forward. On March 4th, D-Day plus 13, the Marines broke through Kuribayashi's main defensive line. That same day, A.B., 29 superfortress nicknamed Dynamite, ran low on fuel returning from a raid over Japan. With the crew facing death, the pilot, First Lieutenant Fred Malo, made the decision to land at the captured Airfield No. 1. While Japanese troops still fought in the northern highlands, Malo brought his bomber down, hit a telephone pole, but landed safely. Enemy soldiers fired at the shiny aircraft while the crew made quick repairs. After 30 minutes, the superfortress roared back into the air. Marines on the ground cheered. Everything they had sacrificed, every yard of blood-soaked ash had just been validated. Dynamite was the first of 2,200 B-29s that would make emergency landings on Iwo Jima before the war ended. With 11-man crews, the island would save more than 24,000 American airmen's lives. By mid-March, the end approached. Marines cleared the northern plateau yard by yard. Japanese resistance withered but never broke. Kuribayashi, displaced from his command bunker, continued directing the defense from a cave system. The general would never be found, his body lost among the island's volcanic rock. On March 25th, in a final act of defiance, 300 Japanese soldiers infiltrated American rear areas, attacking air crews and support personnel. Hundreds of Americans were killed or wounded in what would be the last organized Japanese action. On March 26, 1945, 36 days after the first Marines landed, Iwo Jima was declared secure, but pockets of Japanese defenders remained hidden in caves and tunnels. When Army units took over occupation duties, they would kill another 1,000 enemy soldiers and capture 800 more over the following months. The battle was over, but the island would never stop yielding its dead. The cost was staggering. Of the 20,000 Japanese defenders, only 216 were captured alive. The rest fought to the death, just as Kuribayashi had promised. For American forces, the casualties were the highest of any single operation in Marine Corps history. 6,821 Americans were killed in action or died of wounds. Another 19,217 were wounded, many horrifically. In total, 1 out of every 3 Americans who landed on Iwo Jima became a casualty. The 5th Marine Division arrived in 22 transport ships. It departed in 8. For every square mile of Iwo Jima's volcanic rock, more than 800 Americans gave their lives. The ferocity and valor displayed on Iwo Jima resulted in 27 Medals of Honor, 22 awarded to Marines, 5 to Navy sailors, including 4 hospital corpsmen, It was the highest number ever awarded for a single battle. 14 of those medals were posthumous, received by men who would never come home. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, said of the battle, "Among the Americans who served on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue." One Marine who survived the battle later said of General Kurabayashi, "Let's hope the Japanese don't have any more like him." In the months following the battle, Iwo Jima fulfilled its promise. 3 airfields accommodated hundreds of aircraft. Fighter planes escorted bombing missions to Japan. And 2,200 B-29s made emergency landings, saving over 24,000 American airmen who would have perished in the Pacific. One B-29 pilot, after landing safely on Iwo Jima, said, "Whenever I land on this island, I thank God for the men who fought for it. The sacrifices made on those 8 square miles directly contributed to ending the war." But the horrific casualties also foreshadowed what an invasion of the Japanese home islands would cost. The Battle of Iwo Jima, combined with Okinawa's carnage a month later, influenced President Truman's decision to use atomic weapons to force Japan's surrender, potentially saving hundreds of thousands of American lives. Today, the Iwo Jima Memorial stands in Arlington, Virginia, a bronze recreation of Joe Rosenthal's photograph. It honors not just the battle, but every Marine who has ever served. The faces of the 6 men raising that flag represent thousands who fought on that volcanic island. Their sacrifice reminds us that freedom is never free, and that courage, uncommon valor, lives in ordinary Americans called extraordinary duty. Iwo Jima, 8 square miles, 36 days. The bloodiest battle in Marine Corps history. A place where uncommon valor became a common virtue. We will never forget